Welcome to Shoot Me Straight. Dave Fields. Today we don't have Eddie Gallagher with us. He is out of town. And we have our guest Maurice. What's your last name? Hunter.
Yes.
I've known Maurice a little bit, just as friends off and on through Jiu-Jitsu. And my coach Kyle is good friends with you. Have you been friends with Kyle for a while?
It's been a while, yeah. Maybe about 4 or 5 years, I believe.
Did y'all meet at Destin, Gracie?
Actually, we met at his place. He was doing classes at his place, and I think somebody brought me over there.
Yeah.
And then we met each other and then been friends ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember the first time meeting you Kyle was so excited for another brown belt
Yeah.
to go against.
Yeah. Yeah. Back then, it wasn't a lot of us,
Yeah.
with that much experience in the area. So it's changed a lot now, though.
Are you still at Brown? Have you gotten...
I've transitioned, man. Yeah,
You're a black belt.
Yeah. Finally made it
Congrats.
over that hump. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. How long were you at brown belt?
I was a brown belt for a while, actually longer than all the other years I've been training because I had an injury. When I first got my brown belt, I injured my knee,
Okay.
and that took me out for about 5 years.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And after that, I started teaching just to get some kind of jiu-jitsu in my life. And then I finally came across Blacksmith over in Niceville.
Oh, cool. With
and
Jimmy. Jimmy and Lisa.
Started taking classes there, and then about a year and a half later, I got promoted. So
Awesome. Did Jimmy
Yeah.
give you your black?
we did, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We had him and his wife on there. What an incredible gym.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't know if I've ever seen a gym run like that with so much like care
Yes.
from the owners, like
Absolutely.
genuine. It's almost like created a family.
That's it. It's that family environment that I think a lot of people like and gravitate to them for.
Yeah.
Kids are running around, and
That's awesome.
yeah, it's awesome.
Dude, they have they had some guys come in there before that just wanna like hurt people and
You actually don't get too much of that. I think
Yeah.
the environment kind of disarms people and
yeah.
kind of has people chill out and just train.
Yeah.
And most people who do seem like they might start out that way, by the time they start rolling and getting a sense of the atmosphere, they kind of chill out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess the culture plays a huge role in that. I imagine there's some gyms that perpetuate it,
Yeah.
that you go in there and they're just ego and super competitive and
Yeah. Plus, Jimmy's, he's a big guy.
he's a
so-
big dude. I wouldn't want to mess with him.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. And Lisa is super smart and business savvy and really sweet. Like those two, that combination between those two.
Yes. I mean, I think Lisa she is the gym. Like,
Mm-hmm.
her personality, the way she welcomes people, and the way she builds and fosters those relationships, I think it makes Jimmy's job real easy.
Yeah.
Just focuses on the jiu-jitsu. And like you said, that combination of
Yeah.
the administrative and the people skills with her and then his skills on the mat, it's perfect. Yeah.
He's pretty good. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
I thought about beating him up, but I was like, maybe not today.
Yeah. A lot of people say that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yes.
So how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu?
I've been doing it for a while, and it's kind of interesting how I started because I went down this spiritual path for a while, and then I wanted to do something physical that complemented the internal work that I was doing. So I looked into martial arts. So I looked at a few different arts and looked for something that had a spiritual component, something that worked on the inner person as well as the physical. And initially, it was Aikido that I went into. So I trained that for a little bit, and this was over in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And it just wasn't practical to me. It had some cool ideas around it, but at least the person that was teaching me, he didn't, to me, represent a lot of the practical things that I wanted to learn. So I ended up shifting into Japanese swordsmanship and rapier fencing. So a lot of sword play, and that had the spiritual stuff as well as the physical. I fell in love with it, got really good, really fast, and ended up teaching it. So
Wait a minute. So you left Aikido because you were like, hey, this isn't really practical, and you went into Japanese swordsman's?
I did. See, but the cool thing is we would get padded up.
Yeah.
And we would go full contact, full speed.
Jeez.
And make it as realistic as possible. So that was the practical side of it, yeah.
I'm thinking like fencing, like small little, or I mean.
So we did the Japanese swordsmanship. So the instructor at the time, he invented this design that was made out of, the swords were made out of Kydex plastic, that hard plastic that you find in the dashboards of a car.
Oh, okay.
So he made the swords in the same shape as the katana, the same weight, same length, and they kind of flexed a little bit. So when you make contact, they bend and gave, so it wasn't as much pain, but you did feel it. And then we studied the freestyle forms that were more realistic than like a kendo class where you're just targeting certain body parts and you're just touching the person and then you get a point.
Yeah.
We were actually looking to simulate real fighting. So then that was the Japanese part, but then we also did rapier fencing where we used a double wide epee blade, which is basically a little thicker than your standard sport fencing blade, so it doesn't bend and flex as easily. And then instead of targeting certain body parts like they do in sport fencing, we targeted the whole body, and we also did disarms. So we can take the sword from you or attack the body, and any touch is a kill. So we had our own method of fighting that was as close to realistic as possible. But, yeah, it was fun, man. We had competitions. We had big events. Again, I got really good really fast, ended up teaching, never lost a competition. And during my classes, or after my classes, I would invite other black belts from various disciplines to get together and share knowledge, and we would spar. So one day, I had like a kung fu guy there, hapkido, different arts. We were sparring, and then this purple belt jiu-jitsu guy walks in. So he's getting beat up by everybody from all these different disciplines and just kind of patiently waiting for us to get to the jiu-jitsu part, right? So finally, we get to jiu-jitsu, and the first guy he went against, he choked him. And then the next guy armbarred. So everybody's waiting for their turn and kind of scratching their heads like, man, how is he doing this? And finally it came to me, and we went for a little bit because I was kind of watching what he was doing, but I didn't have any experience. So I survived for a little bit longer than I expected, and then he choked me. And I was trying to figure out how he did it, so I asked him to do it again, and he did it again. And I was like, one more time, and then he did it again even quicker. And from that point on, I was hooked, and I had to figure out how this little purple belt guy was demolishing all of these black belts and all these different arts. And from that point on, I've been doing jiu-jitsu.
Wow. Wow, you had your own little UFC.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was fun, man.
Dude,
Sure.
so was he smaller than you?
He was.
Yeah.
Smaller than everybody, actually. It's how it works.
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
You get a purple belt and you have no background in it, there's hardly any chance.
It's tough, yeah. For sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how old were you at that time?
At that time, I was maybe 27 or 28,
Okay.
I believe, yeah.
And you said you grew up in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Okay. How long were you in Los Angeles?
I left around 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you spent, your whole, like, teens and everything.
Yes.
What's it like growing up in Los Angeles? And
I grew up, so I was born in 78, so I went through the whole 80s era. So, all the typical gang violence, drugs, all of that. So it was rough.
Yeah.
As a child, I was in South Central, so, seeing all of that stuff that you see and hear about. And then after that, in high school, it kind of settled down a little bit because we moved out of the inner city and moved into some suburbs outside of L.A. or outside of the county. And then from there, I moved into the valley, San Fernando Valley. So that was a big difference. But typically, it started out with all the violence and all of that. But then as I got older, I was getting more around the Hollywood scene. So you started dealing with that component, everybody wanting to be famous and wanting to be a star, a lot of superficialness going on. So that's what kind of got me wanting to move, actually, once I became an adult and on my own and started getting more into my inner experience and spirituality. I started looking for something of more substance and less of the superficial.
yeah.
So I ended up moving to Atlanta at that point and stayed there for a few years and then moved to Hawaii was there for another 4 years or so. That was probably the closest to what I felt at home at the time than any other place I had been.
Huh.
So,
Hawaii.
yeah.
Because you were on do you see yourself those time period just on this spiritual journey of trying to find yourself, or
Trying to find myself, but then also understand life as it was just a lot of confusion. I started recognizing things about my experience that just didn't seem to make sense. Like, why was I feeling a lot of the negative emotions, the depression? I went through depression
Yeah.
a little bit of anxiety, and just started noticing that my mind was creating a lot of this. Like, it was the thinking. And when I always felt better, it's because I was thinking differently. So then I started trying to figure out, why was I thinking it was things outside of me that was creating these inner experiences when really it seemed to be originating from within me.
yeah.
So that's kind of what really led me down that path of trying to understand my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I understood that that's exactly what it was. It was me creating a lot of my ups and downs,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not things outside of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you're perceiving, how you're thinking. That's really the basis around the cognitive behavioral therapy. That's their kind of premise is, hey, change your thinking, change your life. Whereas other therapies will be more like change your behavior, change your life.
Yeah.
CBT is really more about your thinking, changing your thoughts. Sometimes interpreting your thoughts. A lot of it too, I find with guys especially, has been figuring out purpose. Like, we can go through pain, but pain without a purpose drives us. That's where a lot, like, you get really dark and depressed.
Yeah.
If you're like, hey, I'm suffering, but I don't know why, or it's for no reason.
Exactly.
Like, if I'm suffering and it's for a greater good and it's real clear on my purpose and stuff, those guys can not only endure, they can thrive in some ways, you know?
Exactly.
Like military guys. We have a lot of military guys on here, and, man, they've been through some suffering that I'm like, good Lord. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever think, oh, man, no one knows what it's like in my skin and all that stuff, meet other people and really hear their stories.
For sure.
People have been through, you never know until you really get to know them.
Yeah.
There's been people that have gone through some horrible abuses and traumatic, people dying in front, all sorts of stuff, and they've grown through it, or sometimes they're stuck in it.
Yeah.
Which I really think that's some of what trauma is. It's just kind of getting stuck in a place where they need help getting pushed past.
Yeah.
But I do think thinking is so huge, how you perceive it.
Yeah. And what I started to discover was it was more than just the thinking, it was how we related to the thoughts. So do I identify with the thoughts and the feelings, or do I recognize them as an object of my experience, something I'm witnessing? And I can determine how much I believe those thoughts and how much I take them personally, or how much I recognize that I could change them, because they're not something that I'm identified with. It's something that I'm experiencing. So it kind of separates who I am from the experience of the thoughts. So then I can listen to my own thinking like I listen to you think and talk. So I'm not attached to what's appearing in my mind as thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly humans are one of the only ones that can do that, They can
for sure.
almost like go third party on themselves and to analyze how they're thinking and behaving.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah.
So through that, during that time of depression and stuff, were you suicidal? Would you say you were suicidal at times, or?
I never got to that point.
Okay.
But see, those thoughts did enter my mind, though. Like, I could understand how a person could be suicidal, because I think just with the conditioning and the things I've been exposed to, a lot of times I've seen people go from feeling so emotionally uncomfortable that the only way they can think of to escape is to just end their existence. So my mind definitely thought of things like that. But I just looked at the ideas as just ideas. Okay, so my mind is saying these things, but that's not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't attached to those thoughts. So it didn't affect me like it probably affects a lot of other people, where those thoughts appear and they feel like they have to go out and see them through. I didn't. I noticed it, thought about it. I was like, that's not what I want to do. And then just started working through a lot of those things. And me just being able to sit with the thoughts and not, again, attach to them and make them personal, just feel the feelings, notice the thoughts, and just be present with it. Just let it happen. Just watch and sit with it. Eventually they passed. You know, it was when those moments when I ever tried to hold on to or resist the thoughts, that's when I suffered from them the most, and they lasted the longest. Just actually embracing it, going into it, feeling it, being with it, present with it, helped tremendously.
What kind of thoughts were like is it negative self-talk stuff where you're going, you're a horrible person or like whatever?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, why me? You know, why do I have to go through this? I don't want to go through this. When is this going to end? This is horrible, you know. And then you start getting into the, you know, talking down on yourself and how you messed up and how, you know, you are incapable of certain things, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that stuff turns, I mean, we start off as guilt, can turn into shame too. It's like, you know, it's not, oh, you messed up. It's, you're a mess up.
Yes.
You know?
How horrible you are for messing up.
Yeah. We can be the hardest on ourselves.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's when you were going through this, you mentioned it as like a spiritual journey. You feel like, hey, a greater purpose. There's a greater purpose in the world. There's a God of some sort.
Yes. So interesting you say that, because I grew up Christian, Baptist, in the church.
Baptist or Southern Baptist?
Baptist.
Okay.
Yeah, it was probably a combination though. You know,
right.
A little Southern mixed in, but yeah. So I was one of those kids who had a lot of questions growing up in church. You know, like, so with one of the questions I remember asking a lot that I never got a good answer for was, why do we pray for people that we care about, but we don't pray for everybody else? So I would find myself at night, I felt like I was sneaking around to do this, but I would pray because I was taught, pray for your sister, pray for your family, so on and so forth. And then after I would do that, I felt like I was being sneaky, and I would pray for the world. I would pray for everybody. Pray for the strangers, the people I don't know, the people I saw at church or at school or at the grocery store. And that felt more realistic for me, just making it about everybody and not excluding people because they're not part of my family. So I would ask questions about stuff like that. And then also, you know, if someone passed away and I would go to a service, a funeral service, why are we upset that someone is going to heaven when that's what the goal is, to go to heaven, to be with God? So why are we upset about that? Why aren't we celebrating? So it was just things like that, you know, the curious young mind would ask, and I never really got answers. So I grew up questioning a lot of the things that I was exposed to and learning. And then as I got older, I started to understand better why those questions probably weren't answered, and then how, for me, there was just more to my spiritual experience than what I was taught growing up. So I just started exploring beyond what I was taught. And
you say that you're like Buddhism, Hinduism, like other religions?
Other religions, and then just life wisdom in general, just things about the mind in general and about spirituality, anything beyond our physical experience. And to me, God took on a whole other meaning than what I was taught. And I'm guessing maybe it's similar to what was being taught, but I just didn't see it that way based on how I was interpreting the information. But I felt better thinking of God as not a jealous God, as not a punishing God, as all loving, as all inclusive, things of that nature. So in religion, in terms of what I was being taught, it didn't have those elements as much.
Yeah.
So I just started gravitating more toward everyone is worthy of love, everyone is worthy of God's grace, God's love, of, being a part of God's family, so to speak. So anything that had to do with being all inclusive was what I kind of resonated with.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that led to me eventually coming to this concept of self-love that, to me, summed up all of what I thought made sense about life. And it started with me actually writing a letter to my daughter back when she was 2. I have 3 kids, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
17-year-old, 16-year-old, and a 6-year-old.
Ooh, you got space there.
Yeah, a little bit of space. So the 16-year-old is my daughter. She's the only girl I have, and then I have the 2 boys.
Uh-huh.
But when she was 2, I wanted to write her a letter about self-value and self-empowerment, and she's only 2, so she couldn't read it. But I was thinking as she grows, she'll have something from me that's from the heart that she can read if she ever had moments of feeling any self-doubt or having issues with her self-esteem. She can have some words from me that could be encouraging and potentially help her deal with a lot of those things. So as I was writing the letter, I started coming across this reoccurring theme of everything that you seek from outside of yourself you already have within. And I interpreted that as self-love. And it wasn't that if you want love from someone, that you already have love within. And it's that love that you don't see being present, so you're seeking it from an external source. So that went from everything to respect, honesty, anything you're looking for in another person to give you in terms of an experience, it's already present within you. So that really catapulted me down a spiritual journey where I started studying everything I could find: emotions, fear, the nature of thought itself, relationships, spirituality, God. Everything that was important to the human life experience, I started really diving deep into it. And then it really helped me to kind of fine-tune this whole self-love experience. And then I started to notice that those 2 words, self and love, are 2 of the most important words in human experience, as well as 2 of the most confusing. Everybody's looking for themselves, and everybody's looking for love, and oftentimes we rarely feel like we find either one. And typically, if we ever do find ourselves and find love, we feel fulfilled in life. So it just kind of made sense to me that summed up the whole process. And then once you bring those 2 words together, self, identity, if you will, and then love, which I look at as connection. So if you identify with being a part of the whole, you feel the most fulfilled in life no matter what you do.
You say be a part of the whole, like the world, the others?
Yes. So you don't...
Or your place in the world?
Yeah. So you don't feel as separated from people, and you understand that we're connected in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So that can go really deep and turn into a deep conversation in terms of the whole unity component, because for me, it's beyond just, we share the same biology and, we have the same blood and all that kind of stuff. It's like my experience with you. Whatever I think about you in terms of my interpretations or my perception is what I'm going to experience you as. So I started to notice that in relationships, I'm experiencing what I think about people more than I'm experiencing the person themselves. So that makes my experience of who that person is unique to just me, because I have a specific way of seeing this person. When you ask another person about you, they're probably going to have a totally different version of who you are to them, because they're creating you to be based on how they think. Then you ask your wife maybe what she thinks, and then it's going to be a totally different for her. Your kids, totally different for them. So in a lot of ways, we're creating who people are to us based on how we think about them. So that makes you, from my experience, based on things that are going on within me.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, we're connected, you know. And then also, anything you do in our interaction is going to trigger certain things within me. So if you smile a certain way, and that same smile, you know, I saw that with a guy I had a fight with, and I'm going to be thinking certain negative things by that smile. Or if, you know, you do whatever you do, it's always going to inspire certain things within me. So then that way you become kind of a mirror for my psychological.
Yeah. Your whole past, your whole experiences.
Exactly.
100%. Like the lens through which you see others. You know, you've developed that lens for so long. Some of us are nearsighted. Some of us are farsighted. It's
Exactly.
like, you know, some of us haven't done. If we haven't done any work on ourselves and growth on us and like deeper work, then man, we're gonna have a lot of times we're gonna have a lot shallower view of others and our experience of others, because we don't really have too like wide of a framework of going, oh, I can see, you know, if I'm over here and I'm like being sarcastic or stuff like that, and you've done a lot of work on yourself, you may not get triggered as much because you're going, oh man, I've been there.
Exactly.
You know, he's nervous or feels, you know, I understand what that's like, and man, I acted out like that too because other people were triggering. You know, you have a maturity, emotional, psychological maturity that's gone through. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love how you put self and love together. Like those two, when it's similar to jiu-jitsu, right? Like everything. And jiu-jitsu is probably the one sport that such a analogy for life. I mean, it's such a microcosm.
Absolutely.
Like for a lot of guys that I've met, and for sure for me, you know, my mind doesn't stop, right? Like my mind's always going. I'm always wanting to learn and grow. And so jiu-jitsu, a few mornings that I get done, like it's not about, you know, oh, you need to, you know, elbow escape from this, and or you know, it's not necessarily a technique that I'm like triggering on. A lot of times it's, man, that's how I show up in this situation in this world, or man, this is the pattern for me that happens, where it helps you push through your own personal journey.
Absolutely.
You know, who cares if like you get choked out? You're gonna get choked out. Period. If you do it like a lot,
absolutely.
you're gonna get beat up a lot, which is great.
Yeah.
That's such a growing experience, but it's one sport I've played. Other people say golf is similar. Okay. I'm not that good at golf at all, but they talk about golf in the sense that it helps them frame up stuff they're working through in their life. To me, it's hard to see it working as good as jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is going to like make it really clear.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to be fighting for your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the cool things about jiu-jitsu to me is, well, first of all, for men, if you think about it, how many times do we actually hug and have any kind of intimate interaction with other men, right? Even other people in general besides our immediate family. So in jiu-jitsu, you're constantly being in an intimate space with other people, and you're essentially getting hugs from pretty much everybody on the mat in some form or fashion, right?
Yeah.
So it creates this bond that we don't typically have outside of jiu-jitsu. And then secondly, you ever notice how much you can get to know somebody from a role, you know, in ways that you would never know them through just a conversation? Like you see what they're afraid of, you see how they tactically think, you see just certain elements of their personality based on how they go about defending themselves, attacking you, and just moving in general. How they respond under pressure, how they act when they're uncomfortable. You know, a lot of their deeper components of their personality come out through a role. So really
good and bad.
Exactly. And
you ever have the experience where you roll with someone and you're like, maybe when you're lower belts and, you know, this dude's high level black belt, and it's like it was pretty easy, and you're like, you purposely didn't, you know, like, and they did that out of respect, or you have a new guy come in and, you know, you're like, okay, he's got the arm bar, like, you know, but he doesn't execute on it, and you're like, hey, how come you didn't do that?
Yeah,
you know, you had me there, and they're like, oh, well, man, like, I don't need to, you know, and then you'll have other guys that, I mean, they have to roll again and again and again because they're like, oh, I have to get that, and you're like, okay, ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Get a wide range of personalities that come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting that way.
Yeah. What's interesting though is it's really a journey. I don't think of I don't think of like hierarchy with jiu-jitsu. I guess you do in the sense of like I know if we roll you would win if we're in a like you're a black belt. You know, I'm about to have a blue, so like that's a very big gap there, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think about it in that way. I think about it as I'm learning. It's me against me.
Yes.
In a sense, so that, I mean, going back to yourself and love, that self part of, man, it's me against me and me getting better, me growing.
Mm-hmm.
Also with jiu-jitsu, of learning how, you know, your self-talk.
Yes.
And, you know.
Indeed. I look at it the same way. Even at this point, it's always something for me to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So every person provides a unique opportunity for me to learn something new about myself.
Yeah.
Based on our interaction. And that's how I see life as well.
Yeah. Do you get that now? Are you getting that everywhere? Like just in conversations, just in your relationships?
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah.
To me, everything I'm doing is showing me a different aspect of myself. It's helping me learn and become more acquainted with different components of who I am. Yeah. So I look at every conversation as an opportunity to learn not only about myself, but also potentially something about the other person.
Yeah, for sure.
So I can never get bored, you know, don't have bad days anymore. You know, everything is all about me experiencing something new in myself. So I'm excited all the time about the different opportunities to do that.
Spiritually, do you feel like you've landed somewhere or have framework of relationship with God, or are you more like maybe not a God, but I have landed around this in a spiritual way, like loving myself and loving others type? So
for me, God is love, essentially. Mm-hmm. That feeling we get when we consider ourselves in love, to me, that's the feeling of connecting with God. Mm-hmm. And then I also see God as the force that brings life to this world. So the life force of this world, to me, is essentially God. So as long as I'm connected with that and have some sense of relationship with that force, to me, that's my relationship with God. So I try, my goal is to not identify as much with the physical and the mental concepts of who I am, but more so with that spiritual force that's part of all that is in terms of life on this planet. Yeah. So that's what I would say is my experience of God. But essentially, to me,
which is Christian. I mean, a Christian wouldn't disagree with that, right? Yeah. Like the force of love and creation, and also, I mean, the scripture, God is love. Yeah. Exactly. You know, so some of those roots from when you were younger,
exactly,
are there. But a lot of stuff from what you got from church, which I got all sorts of baggage from church growing up. Yeah. Like, and I have a framework for it. I'm still growing in it, though. I really struggle with Christian culture. Okay. The culture. Yeah. I don't struggle with Jesus. Jesus, like, I mean, he saved me. But, like, I still really struggle with Christians sometimes. Or the church culture, in a sense. It's like almost anti-gospel. It's like, hey, look, I got morals. I'm good. Yeah. It's like, well, if you're good, you don't need Jesus. Right. You know, like, I still need him. Yeah. But yeah, Do you feel like you're still growing there and like
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think I'm at the point now, I think, where I understand the difference between me as a concept or ego versus me as being connected with that spiritual essence with God. And my goal now is just to more so fine tune that relationship, that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I love with AA, I should say a 12-step program, just following traditions, with being a part of a 12-step program is a lot of Christians really struggle with the idea of where they say a God of your own understanding in step 3. To be honest, though, like my understanding of God has always, like, it changes, like it grows, and it should change. Like I should have more and more, hopefully, a more and more understanding of God and a better relationship with Him as it grows. Just like my relationship with my daughters have changed and grown. It's not a new daughter, right?
Right.
It's just I know them more. I know little nuances. I love them. I should say I love them more. Like I'm more bonded with them.
Yeah.
You know, my love is like I've loved them since they were born, but I'm more and more and more bonded with them and know them in such a deeper way. Just like you're 2 years old when you wrote that letter to your daughter. You understand yourself so much more now that she's 17 probably, but
Absolutely.
you understand her and her personality and who she's grown into as a young woman now,
Yeah.
which is wild.
Absolutely. Let me say this and invite you to consider something based on what you just said about how as your thoughts and your understanding in your mind evolves, so does your relationships evolve. Well, for me, the experience of God or my connection and relationship with God ultimately is outside of thought. That makes sense. So I experience love and I experience a connection with God most when I stop thinking about what God is and who God is and trying to understand it with my mind and just allow myself to experientially connect. So getting out of my mind and just being completely present gives me the most powerful and the deepest experience and connection with love or with God as well than anything else. And even with people, my daughter, I feel the most connected and loved in her presence when I don't think any thoughts about her. I'm just completely present in the moment. I can look at her without thinking about her name, thinking about what I call her, that she is my daughter. I eliminate all of those thoughts because for me, it's the thoughts that separate us, right? If we remove all the thoughts, what's left is just the beingness of each individual. And that's where we feel the closest and the most connection, at least in my experience. So that's what I eventually evolved to understand, at least for me, that whatever I can think about God is only limiting my experience with God. So the more I can get the thoughts out of the way, the more I can fully experience my connection. That makes sense.
Some.
Okay.
Yeah, some.
Okay.
It's hard for me to separate having any thoughts, but I do understand kind of not being in your head,
Okay.
right? Like, I could use a jiu-jitsu example, but I get the, just being there, being present. Thoughts will come up, though. I don't know. I have to think about that one.
Well, if you think about it like this, right? Anybody who you've ever heard talk about any moment in their life where they excelled at some activity or in some form or fashion. Take Michael Jordan, for instance. Some of his best games, what does he say? Or anybody, they say, I didn't even know where I was. I was completely in a flow state. I completely blacked out. I don't really remember what happened. I was completely present. I was out of my mind, right? So that's when he felt the fullest in terms of connection with what he was doing, and he was able to be at his best. And I think we all have moments of that in our lives with different activities, but a lot of times we don't look at that same experience being uh, involved in our relationships or in how we feel about people when it comes to love. I think even when we meet people and we fall in love with them, a lot of times our best moments are those where we are just completely lost in the experience. Right? We're not thinking about anything. We're just fully feeling the energy and the emotion of that interaction.
Gotcha.
And I think that's more so what I'm talking about, just kind of being in the moment so much that you kind of forget time, you forget about who you are, who they are. You're just completely immersed as fully as possible in that experience.
More about feeling, like the feelings side of, like, you know, you're feeling it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's conceptual understanding and then there's experiential understanding. And I think the experiential is the one that's most accurate in terms of what really is. Otherwise, we're just dealing with our thoughts. Like I'm dealing with what I think about a person more so who that person really is. And who that person is, I can never understand with my mind. I have to experience them. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a therapy concept of Gestalt, and Gestalt is like just experiential therapy, where a lot of therapists use it. It's super powerful. In a sense, like if you said like a black belt therapist, you know, they would have like in their toolbox. Gestalt would be a huge one where, you know, where you have stuff buried for years and years and years, and they're taking you through, you know, they'll say, where do you feel it? Point to where you feel it, you know. I feel it right here, you know. Now have it talk from right here. Like they'll do,
Gotcha.
it's really, or they'll do role playing type stuff where, what would be a good example that you would know? The movie Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that one?
I have.
Where he's like, you know, it's not your fault. It's not, you know, he's like, he was role playing out, you know, my dad would lay out and he's like the belt, you know, he had like all these, like which one you want to get beat with, and he'd always choose the hardest one.
Right.
You know, and it was, he was immersing him in that experience as a kid, and then talking to that kid inside of him to get, it was that very feeling experiential.
Yeah.
You know,
Got it.
because it got down to those deep levels, which is super powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
Definitely. You got to go deeper if you want to go higher. Right?
yeah,
Yeah. And that's what we avoid a lot. You know, we like to stay on the surface because it's easier. But
Yeah.
going deeper is when it gets more difficult, but we grow more, I think,
yeah.
the deeper we go.
So when you got to this place where you're understanding the self and love, have you thought about writing a book or like your experience of where you go from here?
Yes. So once I really started to immerse myself in learning and experiencing and practicing a lot of those ideas, I started sharing a lot of it with people that I was closest to, and they started finding that it was helping them. So as I did that more, I decided, rather, that my life's purpose now is to continue practicing and embodying the ideas, but then to share them to the largest degree possible. So I thought about what would be the best way or vehicle to share these ideas, and the idea of a brand came to mind. And so I started thinking about how can I use a brand to share these ideas. And my personality, I'm very creative, so I like to come up with unique ways of expressing myself. So I decided to combine my creative side with these spiritual ideas and find unique creative ways to share all of these ideas in a way that's unique to what we're used to experiencing. So initially, I started organizing a festival. So I had this self-love and wellness festival that I did for about 3 or 4 years over in Destin at the Cultural Arts Center, Mattie Kelly Cultural Arts Center. Did that for a few years. It was very experiential. It had a lot of elements at the booths where people would shop, where you can actually experience the things they were offering. We had yoga, jiu-jitsu was out there. We had music. It was a fun, family festive event that had a lot of those positive, uplifting components. I also did write a book called Another Day in Self-Love, which I independently published.
Cool.
After that, I wrote 2 or 3 other manuscripts. Haven't published those yet. Still looking for a unique and creative avenue for publishing those. Started creating products, T-shirt designs. I did a candle collaboration, a self-love candle. I started finding different ways to collaborate with others to help get the message out. And then ultimately, I developed a concept for the brand that's somewhat unique to what people are typically doing when they're trying to share this type of information. So my goal is collaboration over competition. So I have a motto that is based around collaborating with other brands to leverage their reach and their audience to get the message out to more people without having it be basically sold on, solely on this brand. So imagine eventually a collaboration with like a Mattel. So there's a self-love doll. So a lot of young girls can see a lot of this messaging centered around this doll they get to play with. Let's say L'Oreal does a collaboration with this brand where we put a lot of self-love messaging on some of the makeup and the mirrors and the compacts where they open it and they can read something positive every day when they put on their makeup. Various clothing brands, we can add our messaging to that. We can do films and television projects where we add the messaging in the stories, podcasts, anything you can think of that's a platform that can be something that people are using in their day-to-day life. We can add our messaging to that to help spread the message. And the goal is to show that love is actually something that could be profitable. You can actually generate revenue from something positive, and it doesn't have to always be fear-based and based around scarcity and lack. In addition to that, ultimately, I like to create a commercial mechanism through which to integrate life wisdom into day-to-day life experience for people. I think right now there's a lot of retreats and workshops and seminars and stuff that share information, but there's not a lot of things that helps us to integrate that information into our lives in an easy, practical, relatable way, where we're not going home after a retreat or an event and then the stuff just kind of disappears because we get back into the day-to-day grind that we're used to. Rather having something that we can put that information into some type of system where it helps us to apply it and continues to think about it and practice it as we go through our lives. So ultimately, that's my goal, is to add some innovation and creativity to how we currently not only share and consume this type of information and content, but also integrate it into our lives.
So if a Mattel or what's the other one, L'Oreal or whoever,
Disney, whoever,
if they if they wanted to collaborate with you, or someone out there's like, it resonates with them and they want to connect with you, how would they get a hold of you?
Right now, I'm in the process of revamping the website that I created a few years back, and I have a strange relationship with social media, so I don't really have a platform there yet, but I'm either reachable through email, or I take calls, man. My phone number is available as well. So,
what's your email?
The email is artistoflife, and I spell life, L-Y-F, at AOL.com. And my phone number, 850-842-1979. I have no problem sharing that. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you hear it there. You want to get a hold of Maurice, then just literally call him, text him, shoot him an email.
Absolutely. I'm also looking to, I know we talked about earlier, doing things of substance and with impact. I'm also looking to connect with anyone that has any interest in creating films or video content. to create some video versions of some of these ideas that are uplifting and empowering. I like to create a visual voice, so to speak, that creatively demonstrates and illustrates how some of these ideas are applied in practical ways through video. So instead of doing lectures and just using books, showing people what it looks like to have emotional independence, or to be able to recognize how certain thoughts are not something that you have to identify with and take personally. You can actually observe them and then change the way you relate to them. So a lot of these things that we're talking about, I like to illustrate through visuals how it looks to actually apply that.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone that's got skills like that want to reach out to you and collaborate with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't think of a better time in this world that people need to hear positive stuff.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. And, imagine how many people would be impacted and how they could be if they just saw these ideas in different places at different times throughout their life. I mean, we see a lot of fear-based propaganda and ideas everywhere we look. What if it was balanced out with some positive, love-based stuff? So that's kind of my ultimate goal, is just to expose more people to more of these types of ideas in a high frequency, across the board, all over the world. Just put it in front of people and then see how they respond, how it impacts them. And we might be surprised at how many cool things come out of that.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. That's a cool creative, like you're using your skills and your mind, your personality to you're figuring out how to really purpose that to help others.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, man.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Out.